I'm 24, and until last month I really thought my dad was the one person I could always count on. I was wrong. So unbelievably wrong. It started just after my mom passed away. She had a rare neurological condition that slowly shut her body down over the course of 2 years. It was brutal. Watching someone so full of life turn into a whisper of themselves, it messes with your head, especially when you're the one helping bathe her, feed her, and clean up the messes no one talks about. I dropped out of college my junior year to come home and help. My younger sister Ava was still in high school then. She visited sometimes. Sometimes. That's all I'll say. After Mom passed, my dad told me he didn't know how he'd survive the grief without me. Said I was his rock. That I kept this family together. Those words stuck to me. I believed him. We never talked much about money growing up, but I knew my parents weren't rich. Mom worked as a librarian. Dad's been an accountant for the same firm for 20 years. After the funeral, Dad mentioned that Mom had left behind some life insurance, and that it would help us stay afloat. I didn't ask for details. I trusted him. I've always trusted him. But then, 2 weeks after the funeral, Ava posted something on her Instagram story that made my stomach twist. It was just a short video, maybe 5 seconds. A bright kitchen with a huge island and brand new appliances, a sparkly backsplash, and a caption that read, "Home sweet home." Home sweet home? I thought maybe she was house-sitting for someone, or just visiting a friend, but something about it didn't sit right. So I asked her. She didn't respond. Instead, I got a call from my dad an hour later, and that's when things got strange. When my dad called, his voice was casual, too casual. He asked how I was doing, if I'd eaten, the usual small talk that felt weirdly. I brought up Ava's story right away and asked what it was about. He paused, just for a second, but I caught it. Then he said, "Oh yeah, she's just renting a place with some friends for the summer. Nothing big." But the video didn't look like some college student crash pad. It looked staged, like the kind of place you see in real estate listings. Spotless, minimalist. Ava's never been a minimalist in her life. I didn't push it though. I wanted to believe him. I always want to believe. Still, something gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So that night, I did something I've never done before. I checked our county property records online. I didn't even know how to search properly, but after scrolling through a dozen dead ends, I found it. The deed was listed under a trust, our family trust, with my dad as the trustee. And the buyer? Ava, my sister. He bought her a house. A 4-bedroom, 2-bath house in a suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes from where we grew up. Paid in full. No mortgage. I just sat there staring at the screen, completely frozen. I thought maybe I misread something. Maybe it was some kind of tax shelter. I don't know, anything else. But it was clear. It was purchased just 3 weeks after our mom passed away. 3 weeks. While I was still cleaning out Mom's closet, still waking up crying, still sleeping in the same house where I watched her die. He was out buying Ava a damn house, and here's the part that really made me sick. 2 days before the purchase, Dad had asked me to sign something. He said it was paperwork to finalize Mom's will and settle everything legally. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, still in my pajamas, signing whatever he slid in front of me. I didn't read a word. I trusted him. He said, "It's just estate stuff, nothing big." I remember joking, "Well, I hope I'm not signing away my soul." And he laughed. Laugh sounds different. The next day, I drove to his house, our house. The one I'd basically taken over running while Mom was dying. The one I stayed in even after she passed because I thought he needed me around. Because I thought I was helping. I didn't tell him I was coming. I walked in like I always did, using my key, heart racing the entire time. He was in the kitchen, drinking coffee, scrolling on his tablet like it was any other morning. I couldn't even look at him the same way. I asked him straight out, "What did I sign?" He went still. Didn't say a word at first. Just set the mug down and looked at me like a kid caught sneaking out of the house. Then he sighed, the kind of sigh you hear before someone tells you a lie they've already practiced. He said, "It was just a transfer of trustee power. Standard stuff." I told him I'd checked the records. Told him I saw the house. That it was in Ava's name, under the family trust. I asked him why. Why would he do that behind my back? Why would he lie? That's when the cracks started showing. He said she needed a fresh start. That she'd been through a lot with Mom being sick and needed something to help her feel stable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She needed stability? She. The one who barely came by, who popped in once every couple weeks to check in, but spent more time taking selfies with Mom than helping her to the bathroom. I reminded him of all the nights I didn't sleep, all the times I fed Mom when she couldn't chew, cleaned her sheets when she couldn't control her bowels. Where was Ava then? And do you know what he said? "That's why I didn't give her the responsibility. You were stronger." I don't even remember walking out. Just the sound of the door slamming behind me and my hands shaking as I sat in my car. That night, I went through every document I had. Old emails from the lawyer, the scanned will, even bank statements. I finally found it. The paper he'd made me sign, it didn't just transfer trustee power. It waived my right to any claim on the family trust's liquid assets. The life insurance, the house, the cash, everything. And worst of all, I think Mom knew. The next morning, I woke up to an email from a name I hadn't seen in months. Janice, Mom's old friend from her book club. She was also a paralegal at the law firm that handled my parents' will years ago. The subject line just said, "You should see this." Attached was a scanned copy of a letter. It was dated 6 weeks before Mom died, typed, but signed in her shaky handwriting. In it, she outlined her wishes, clearly, painful, and without sugarcoating any. She wrote that she wanted both Ava and me to receive equal parts of her insurance, and anything else left. But more than that, she begged my dad not to let Ava manipulate. Her words, not mine. She said Ava had always been reckless with money, with choices, with people, and that if anything happened to her, Mom, she wanted to make sure I wasn't left cleaning up the messes again. She added a note at the bottom, one I can still hear in her voice even now. "Please don't punish me for being the one who stayed. She gave up too much already." I read it 10 times, maybe more. I cried so hard my chest physically hurt. Because even though she was dying, even though her mind was slipping toward the end, she still saw everything. She knew Ava would find a way to spin it all. She knew my dad, how easily guilt could be used against him. And then, in the email thread, Janice added something else. "She asked me to send this to you only if things didn't go the way she hoped. I'm so sorry." It hit me like a train. Mom knew this might happen. She knew he might turn on me. She knew he might choose Ava, and she tried to protect me. I didn't even realize my hands were I could barely scroll down, so now I had the truth, the proof. But what I didn't have was a clue, because there was something else about that I hadn't told it, something I saw when I drove by it last. And it changed everything. After reading Mom's letter, I couldn't sit still. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I needed to see the house, the one Ava was living in, the one I unknowingly helped pay for by signing away my share of everything. So just after sunset, I drove out there. It was in one of those new developments where all the houses look polished and sterile. The lawns were already manicured, the sidewalks still white and uncracked. The kind of place you move into when you want to prove something. I pulled up a few houses down, parked, and just watched. Ava's car was in the driveway. The lights were on. From the front window, I could see her walking around barefoot in some satin robe, holding a glass of wine. She looked like she was playing house in someone else's life. I felt sick. I was about to leave, just drive away and try to forget all of it. But then the garage door opened, and another car backed out. Not Ava's. It was my dad's. He didn't see me. He turned the opposite direction and drove off, no hesitation. And maybe it was the shock, or the adrenaline, or pure spite, but I did something I still don't quite believe. I followed him. No plan. No idea what I was doing. Just pure instinct. He drove for about 10 minutes. No traffic. No music in my car. Just the sound of my own breathing, and the turn signals as I trailed him from a distance. Then he pulled into a gas station, parked, and went inside. That's when I noticed it. On the passenger seat of his car, a second wine glass, lipstick stain and everything, and in the back seat, a second overnight bag. Not Ava's, not Mom's. Something was very, very wrong. I sat in that parking lot gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands went numb. I kept staring at the bag in the back seat of my dad's car, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was a gym bag. Maybe the wine glass was Ava's. Maybe I was just spiraling. Grief, betrayal, lack of sleep, they all mess with your brain, right? But then he came out of the store, and he wasn't alone. A woman walked out with him. You know how sometimes your body recognizes something before your brain does? That's what happened. I felt this weird jolt, like ice water down my spine. I couldn't see her face right away, just her long brown hair and the way she leaned into my dad, laughing softly, touching his arm like it was second nature. They were close, too close, like people who live together, not just run errands together. When they walked under the gas station lights and turned toward the car, I finally saw her face. It wasn't a stranger. It was Nicole, my mom's old nurse, the one who helped take care of her in the final weeks, the one who used to hum while changing IVs and making tea, the one who would touch my mom's arm gently and tell her she was brave and beautiful, even on the worst days, the one who, after Mom passed, vanished without saying goodbye. Now she was getting into my dad's car, wearing leggings, a hoodie, and my mom's favorite perfume. I could smell it through the crack in my window as they drove past me. I knew that scent like I knew the sound of my mom's voice. Clean, floral, soft. I didn't even realize I was crying until the windows fogged up, and I noticed my chest hiccuping with each breath. My dad, the man who said he didn't know how to live without Mom. The man who told me I was his reason for getting up in the morning. He was sleeping with the woman who watched my mom die. And somehow Ava knew. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling like it could give me answers. My body was exhausted, but my mind was on fire. I kept going over every conversation, every weird look, every offhand comment from Ava in the weeks after Mom died. It all started clicking into place like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were even missing. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted Ava and said I was coming over. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a bring coffee, like nothing was wrong. The audacity. When I pulled up to the house, her house, she opened the door barefoot again, smiling like we were just two sisters hanging out. She looked like she'd just woken up, messy bun and all, phone in one hand, mug in the other. She barely said hello before turning around and walking back into the house, leaving the door open behind her. I followed her in and shut the door. I stood in that expensive kitchen, watching her pour oat milk into a mug shaped like a cat's head. That stupid mug. I gave her that for her 18th birthday, and all I could think was, you knew. So I asked her calmly at first, if she knew about Dad and Nicole, if she'd known about the house, if she knew about the trust, if she knew I'd signed away everything, and just didn't say a word. She didn't even flinch, just took a sip of coffee, sighed, and leaned against the counter. Then she said, yeah, I knew. I just stood there, waiting for an explanation, regret, something, but Ava never was one for guilt. She shrugged and said, it wasn't my place to say anything. You and Dad were always so close. I figured he'd tell you when he was ready. I asked her how long it had been going on with Dad and Nicole. She hesitated for half a second too long. Then she said, since before Mom passed. That's when the kind of rage that doesn't come from anger, it comes from disgust. It comes from mourning something all over again. My dad had been sleeping with Nicole while Mom was dying, and Ava had known, and none of them said a word. She must have seen the look on my face because she quickly followed up with, look, it wasn't like that. Nicole helped him through a lot. You don't know how hard it was for him. You were busy with Mom. Busy with Mom. Like I was just running errands. Like I wasn't watching her fade away day by day while Dad was out playing house with the nurse. I asked her one more question. Why did Mom's letter say not to trust her? And Ava just blinked, like she hadn't expected that one. Then she laughed, not like something was funny, but like she was caught, and the mask slipped for just a second. She said, I guess Mom always liked you better. And just like that, I realized something. This wasn't just about money. This was personal. I didn't say another word to Ava. I just left. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive. My brain kept looping that sentence. I guess Mom always liked you. It was like she'd been waiting years to say it, and that's when I knew I wasn't crazy. This wasn't just about Dad doing what he had to do to move on. This was coordinated, quiet, calculated. They knew exactly what. The next day, I called my dad and told him I needed to talk. Just us. I said it was important. He agreed, said to come by after work. When I got to the house, he was already sitting in the living room. No TV on, no phone in his hand, just sitting there like he knew what was coming. I stood in the doorway for him, looking at him. He looked tired, smaller somehow, like the weight of what he'd done was finally settling on his shoulders. I didn't ease into it. I told him I knew everything, about the trust, about the house, about Nicole, and then I told him I'd seen them, at the gas station, with the wine glass and the overnight bag. He didn't even deny it. He just closed his eyes and said, I knew this day was coming. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I just asked why. Why did he do it behind my back? Why didn't he tell me about the house? Why Nicole? Why lie? He said he didn't want to burden me with the details, that after everything I did for Mom, he didn't want me to feel like I had to keep carrying him too, that I had sacrificed enough already, and he just wanted me to move on. But he didn't want me to move on with anything. Not with money, not with stability, not with truth. He wanted me to just disappear from the equation. The grief manager, the caretaker who gets thanked with a pat on the head and nothing more. I told him I saw Mom's letter. That's when his whole face changed. His hands went rigid, jaw clenched. He said, that letter wasn't supposed to be sent. I said, but it was written. That means something. He got quiet again, then said the one thing I will never forget. She always underestimated Ava, thought she was selfish. But Ava's the one who made sure I didn't fall apart. And I said, she made sure you didn't fall apart while I was keeping Mom alive. He couldn't even look at me. Then he stood up and said, it's done now. I can't undo it. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just, it's done. But something in that moment snapped. Not in me, in him. Like he'd been keeping this dam sealed tight and it was starting to crack. And I realized there was still more he wasn't telling. Something he was protecting, but not out of guilt, out of fear. I left the house with my mind spinning, but something about the way my dad reacted, that look on his face when I Mom's letter, like someone had just exposed a wound he thought he'd buried deep. It wasn't shame, it wasn't guilt, it was something closer to pain. And then I remembered something Ava said once, months before Mom passed. We were in the hospital, Mom was asleep, the machines humming, and Ava had leaned over to whisper something that barely registered. She said, Dad's scared of what'll come out when she's gone. At the time, I thought she meant emotions, grief, maybe secrets from their marriage. But now I was starting to wonder, what if it wasn't Mom's secrets he was afraid of? What if it was Ava's? So I started digging. I still had access to Mom's cloud account from when I helped her organize files for her will. I hadn't looked at it since she passed. Most of it was benign, pictures, recipes, lists of medications, messages to her doctors. But then I found a folder tucked away, buried under 3 nested directories labeled Old Taxes. Inside were scanned pages of a handwritten notebook. Her handwriting, shaky, uneven from the medications, but still hers, and what I read made my blood run cold. She'd been keeping a journal for the last few months of her life. Most of it was about pain, about fear, about the way her body was failing her. But then, starting about 2 weeks before her final hospitalization, it changed. She started writing about Ava. She said Ava had been pressuring her about the will, trying to convince her to even things out financially, saying things like, "You know my name will be fine. She's always been the responsible one. And I've never had a chance to catch up because she always got there first." Mom said Ava even brought Nicole over without telling anyone. Said they sat in the living room and talked in hushed tones when Dad wasn't home. That she caught Nicole rifling through her drawer of legal paperwork when she thought Mom was asleep in the chair. And then there was one final entry, just 4 days before Mom slipped into her final coma. It said, "I'm scared. I think they're planning something." Ava said, "You won't be around long enough to worry about this." I don't know what she meant. I had to read that last line 5 times before it sank in. "You won't be around long enough to worry about this." What the hell did that mean? Was Ava threatening her? Was Nicole involved? Did Dad know? Because suddenly, this wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about money. It was about what happened to Mom, and whether any of it had really been natural. I didn't go to the police. Not right away. What was I going to say? That I found a journal? That my dying mother suspected something? That my sister made a vague comment that could... No, I needed more. I called Janice, the paralegal who sent me Mom's letter. I didn't tell just enough. I asked her if she'd ever seen Ava and Nicole together near the end. She hesitated. Then she said, "They were always around each other, way more than your mom knew." That's when I asked her for one more thing. Copies of the original will, before the final version was signed. She was quiet for a second, then said 3 days later she emailed me a scanned copy. It was from a month before Mom passed. The distribution was clear. The estate was to be split equally between me and Ava. Equal shares, equal access, everything split straight to... That's not the will Dad had me sign off. The one he had notarized came too weak to speak, let alone sign it. That version gave full control of the trust to my father, and it left me just a vague clause, discretion elder daughter. Ava had to be gifted property assets in advance. It didn't make sense until I saw the notary's signature. Nicole, her full name, her credential. Nicole notarized, the one that stripped me, the one signed while Mom was drugged and barely... That was it, the missing piece. I took the journal, both wills and the record, to a lawyer, one of Mom's old friends, someone I trusted. Within a week, he confirmed it. The second will wasn't just shady, it was invalid. Nicole notarizing it was a direct conflict of interest. Given her relationship with my father, and especially if she stood to benefit, it could be argued that the will was coerced, or even forged. And with the journal, the testimony from Janice, the timeline, we had enough to reopen the estate. I didn't tell Ava or my dad. I let them stew in their house, sipping wine and posting fake family photos while the court subpoenaed records and froze the trust. When they got served, Ava texted me just one thing: "You've always been jealous. Now everyone's going to see it." She still didn't get it. This wasn't about money, or even revenge. This was about Mom, about how they took her final months and twisted them, about how they used her silence to build a future on lies, about how I watched her die while they were already making plans to bury her and move on. The court case is ongoing. There are depositions scheduled, and the lawyer says it could take months, maybe longer. But here's what I know. Nicole disappeared. The day the notice hit her mailbox, she packed her bags and left town. Ava stopped posting. My dad hasn't called. Not once. And that's fine, because the truth is out now, and I'm not the one who should be scared anymore. Update. I went back to Mom's old room today, sat on her bed, looked out the window she used to stare through, and her voice was gone, and her hands were too weak to hold a book. I whispered, "I found it, Mom. Everything. I know now." And for the first time in almost a year, I felt something, not because justice is done, but because it's finally started. And this time, I won't stop until it ends where it first placed.